Welcome to our show, the Playground Rules and Antics Phenomenon. This is Mark from the Eric and Mark Show. And welcome. Today we are going to go ahead and talk about a topic which is important. We've been talking about coping mechanisms recently. How do we cope with what happens to us in our lives that's maybe a negative occurrence or we're at a disadvantage? What can we do to go ahead and find a way to pick ourselves up, brush ourselves off as these things go, and get back in the game? How do we bounce back? What keeps us moving ahead? That type of thing. So again, some of those are processing. We process what our emotions, our feelings, process certain thoughts. But sometimes it's in addition to knowing or understanding what we're processing, it's good to know or understand how other people might be processing things or perceiving things. And that's really what today's show is about. What is an actual advantage that someone might have over you in the playground rules and antics phenomenon, such as maybe they really are physically stronger than you, or maybe they are a better fighter than you. Maybe they're better at a specific subject than you. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. That's okay. But then sometimes they're really not. And they might make you feel like they're better than you at something, or they may make you question yourself. And that's them taking away your leverage, your energy, in a potential confrontation, let's say. We're going to dig into that a little bit more. So, Eric, I want to get your idea or your perception as we've been talking this evening. What would you define as an actual advantage versus a perceived advantage, along the lines of what I've been talking about? And what are some practical applications of both in life, perhaps, how they could be used in a positive way to give ourselves leverage without harming somebody else, or they can be used in a negative way, maybe in the way that somebody gets intimidated in a job scenario or gets bullied on an actual playground?
So sometimes the distinction is a bit elusive, but in my understanding, I would say actual would be like in a physical confrontation where you have somebody who is visibly in better shape, who is visibly stronger, visibly more agile. And in a not actual way, it's going to be they're able to carry themselves in a way that they can be perceived as superior, such as in The Art of War, where it discusses that 90% of winning a battle is image. So where you can be a weaker army, let's say, but the way that you show up on the battlefield is intimidating. And so it seems like in one of our biggest quests, this is one of my biggest quests to end bullying, maybe we can reconsider that notion slightly to the extent of maybe bullying is nothing more than the natural representation of people trying to tip the odds in their favor. So by that I mean when you're in school or in a work front or any social scenario, you kind of convince yourself that you're in one or two teams. You're either on the team getting picked on or the team that's picking on. And obviously, for comfort reasons and social standings, we'd rather be the one picking on than the one being picked on. And so for that, we end up either having actual power or sometimes perceived power. And so maybe it's a matter of it's actually an instinct to want to make sure that we're in control of our lives and what's going on around us. I know it may sound a little bit convoluted, but maybe if we reverse engineer a little bit what exactly is the construct of a bully and what are the positive attributes, maybe we can have a better idea on how to find a solution.
Absolutely. Now, to understand better what a bully is, and you had mentioned about what kind of attributes? Can you repeat that part right there?
For an actual bully?
Yeah.
An actual bully is going to be that person that is notoriously stronger. Somebody who obviously goes to the gym, somebody who is confident with themselves, somebody who has scrapped a few times in their life and is confident in that area. That's going to be the actual misguided bully.
Absolutely. So here's the situation that people are struggling along the lines of what you're saying to go ahead and gain leverage or to gain an advantage. So they're trying to either, A, they kind of are in the same boat as somebody else and they're trying to gain an advantage over that other person, or they're trying to, or maybe they're at a disadvantage to begin with compared to somebody else. They're trying to close the gap in that disadvantage. Now, again, those could be actual versus perceived scenarios. So we were talking about earlier, many of us like the TV show, I believe it's on Netflix now, Cobra Kai. And there's a lot of different characters to empathize with on that show. So for people who haven't seen that show, bear with us for just a moment. But there's several characters who maybe started out as the quote-unquote nerds or the have-nots or whatever. They learned karate. And the nerds were the ones who started out maybe, or the have-nots, with the disadvantage compared to the people who were kind of like in the middle, or the people who were on the other end of the spectrum who were the bullies. They were the victims. Then after that, when they learned the karate, then they had two choices of kind of where to go with it. Maybe more than two, but two that initially come to mind. So one of them was just go ahead and say, okay, well, I'm able to defend myself now, and I can close the gap between myself and the bullies, right? And say, okay, well, hey, now we're even with one another, more or less, seemingly at least, in regards to our ability to fight or our toughness, whatever it may be. So now you don't pick on me, and I don't pick on you, and that in that case helps with the karate students in terms of gaining enough leverage to the point where they can close the gap and get into that even playing field. But then after that, sometimes there's aspects of the human nature which don't stop there. And again, sometimes we have a little bit of a psychological edge in how we talk about, or angle how we talk about things in our program, because much of the world is perceived versus actual, or many advantages are psychological versus physical. So what ends up happening to some of those characters in that show, maybe other shows that people have seen that are similar, sometimes for them closing that gap is not enough. Well, they say, well, now I'm more or less even with some of these other people, or at least we're in the same pool, we can both stand our ground. But then they're looking for the advantage over those people. So then they say, wait a minute, I was the one getting bullied by you before. Then I drew to a more even place with you where I balanced the scales between us. And now, actually, I'm going to become the bully and you're going to become the victim. So I've done a full 180 on you. And that's a personal choice at that point. And that speaks, I think, to maybe some level of vengeance or vindication that people might have. Or maybe the insatiable human nature that many of us have, if not all of us to a degree, of, hey, we've gotten this far, why not take it a step further? And kind of like people seek more of fiscal wealth, right? Or the people who have fame might seek more fame or notoriety. Any number of things. So like, well, wait a minute, we're strong. Why not seek to become stronger? So it's not just enough for us to go ahead and balance the scales, maybe, for some of us. Now we want to go ahead and get an advantage. Now we want to make somebody else feel bad. What do you think about that mentality? What do you think about, the arguably insatiable aspects of human nature?
Well, when somebody is ruthlessly picked on, like in the case of the character that goes by the name Hawk, I think it is, in Cobra Kai. Somebody that's ruthlessly picked on and, finally decides to learn how to fight. And for a while, it kind of goes unchecked. He kind of goes to the opposite side and becomes a bully himself. And if we look at all the characters in this show that are bullies, if you look at their backstory, they were also bullied at some time in the past. And that seems like an accurate depiction to me if I go through time and I analyze people that maybe have bullied me. I can almost guarantee you that if you look into their family life, they probably are victims themselves. It's kind of like a cycle. And that's why I think we're big advocates to making sure that there are adults in the room that are actually monitoring the activities, not in a way to weaken society and convince them that it is wrong to fight back, but to show them that they need to measure and be in control of their strength.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what's interesting is that in that show, to your point, you have one school of thought where they say, hey, let's go ahead and let's make our abilities to fight to the point that we can actually use it as an advantage, like a real advantage, and make other people feel worse about themselves. And then another school of thought was hey, let's go ahead and learn how to fight so we don't have to fight, or we learn how to avoid the fight. So again, it depends on what people want to do, and again, that goes to very many different factors of the human psyche, psychology, and like I mentioned before. Maybe some people just are, once they get stronger, start feeling stronger, they become revenge-minded, and they can take things too far. So if I may, I'd like to also go ahead and draw upon some examples which are just not related only to being on the playground or to physical fights. I want to talk about what happens in relationships, maybe some examples, and also places like the workplace, or even, as we talked about in previous shows, special interest groups. So I'd like to elaborate on that, if I may. Now, in the meantime, did you have any specific examples that you could think of that you like to draw upon, Eric, or any other than the popular culture reference, anything that you like to talk about in line with the literature associated with this program, or anything like that you can think of that comes to mind?
So, not from literature, but just from personal experience, my youngest son is in the ROTC, which is a military organization, or paramilitary, because they're not yet in the real military, but they're getting, pruned to be able to one day be successful in that kind of environment. And that kind of environment I'm familiar with because of my law enforcement training. It's really an alpha male kind of setting. And what we're seeing is that if there's not adult supervision in the room, it can quickly get out of hand. So my son is constantly picked on, and he's kind of like the hawk in Cobra Kai. I guess is too nice to fight back, doesn't think that he needs to fight back. But what we're seeing is that when you don't fight back, you end up getting picked on more. And it's kind of upsetting to see, the trend in schools is that there's not enough adult supervision going on. And so, and that kind of sets the groundwork for what's going to happen later on when they're all in adult professional life.
Absolutely. And, it's a shame when anybody gets bullied in general or feels like they have to fight. It really is a shame. But especially in a program, which is like ROTC, which is, a esteemed program and that kind of thing, and hopefully there's been some helpful guidance, intervention there. I mean, we want people, whether they're joining the military or not, we want our young people in our society to feel confident, to feel strong. And we're doing a great disservice, I believe, not only to ourselves and our children, but to the future of our of our nation, of our society, by having these situations come up, especially when it comes down to people being complacent and letting these things happen. For example, if somebody joins an ROTC program, I would think they'd say, okay, well, hey, I want to see what this is about, and it has a military influence, and at some point, I'm neither speaking from neither pro nor anti-military service standpoint, just from the standpoint of the people who do want to join the military and they're interested in probing it or trying it out with ROTC. If they have a bad experience at ROTC, they may decide not to go ahead and further their participation in the future of our country or the military because of that. They may not want to serve our country. So that bleeds over into a lot of things. Maybe people don't feel a sense of patriotism. Like, for example, I was when I was a kid, I was I was born in an Eastern European country, and the thing is, the kids in the school, I was proud to be an American, but the kids in the school kept on, making fun of me. That was, calling me, oh, you're a foreigner, and you don't speak English. And even though I did speak English, I probably spoke English better than most of them. But that's besides the point. And oh, you're a communist, you're a commie, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's not making me feel really warm and fuzzy towards wanting to be a patriot of America. Now, by today's standards, I could say that I do care about this country, and I am to a large degree a patriot. I am pro-America, but the thing is, at that time, I wasn't feeling love. You know what I'm saying? I was coming in from an immigrant family, and these kids are doing this, and it caused a great deal of harm. It made me feel very vulnerable and very fragile. Like I said, I think if this is happening to somebody like your son in ROTC without the proper amount of intervention, then that could affect his own future, but also the future of young people in our country as a whole.
Yeah, because the thing is, this may be counterintuitive, but you don't want a bully to be in charge of the protection of your country or of your city or of anything. You want somebody who is able to fight, but where that's not their knee-jerk reaction to every conflict.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's why with the Cobra Kai reference, to a great degree, even though unfortunately I had to fight my way through a lot of high school, in retrospect, when I say I had, it seemed like everything was failing other than, actual physical self-defense. But the thing is that I really, I'm that guy who, if I can, in most situations back then and now, I'm avoiding the confrontation. I can be kind of like stubborn and kind of assertive, and I can be confrontational in some ways. But what I'm saying is, as far as physical confrontations, I really, really, I never enjoyed that, and I ended up doing that out of necessity. I was pushed towards it because almost everyone that I was talking to, when I was telling my parents or other people, oh, just go ahead and ignore them, or just try to avoid them, or don't pay attention, or it's going to get better soon. We're fed all these different understandings, like, hey, things are going to get better. Well, it didn't get better until I stood my ground, and until I actually started to draw some conclusions about, hey, they may be acting like they have an advantage over me, but their only advantage right now seems like it's psychological or perception, and if I can close that gap, I'll be in a much better place. And I'll get into some of those examples in a second, but for the sake of your son, and I know that he knows self-defense and everything, he's made some progress in the martial arts, and I hope that he uses that he uses his teachings well, and that he is able to guide other young people alongside of him.
Yeah, definitely. What's happening to him, although not too frequently, is kind of a good example of perceived power, because if we were to respond to them with the power that he has shown in his class when he breaks thick boards, he would destroy them. But, he's chose not to. Or they'll challenge him and say, let's meet in the bathroom, let's meet outside. And, we've spoken to him, which is the guidance I think all the youth needs, and basically said that, you feel like you're wimpy by saying I don't want to fight and I don't want to meet in the bathroom, but you're actually showing the opposite. You're actually showing weakness if you acquiesce to that. You're showing strength, actual strength, by saying I don't fight for fun.
Absolutely. Yep. I absolutely agree with that. Now, if I may, I'd like to share some of my own examples with you as well about what I've noticed, either examples that people have submitted to our program, or people that I know, or some things that I've experienced myself. So I'll pursue with those if I may.
Go ahead.
So one of those things, I talked about this, I think, one of our episodes ago, was I want to draw back upon this example, was in the special interest group with where I was playing hockey, and I wasn't at the top of my game, and I had the guy in the locker room who was telling me, what to do and who I could speak with and why I should come and why I should go and that kind of thing. And that guy has a military background, which I don't, but I can hold my own in hockey. And the thing is, I was looking at it. Okay, so height isn't everything, but he's a couple inches short of me. He's a pretty strong guy, and I think I'm pretty tough in my own right too, humbly speaking. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, wait a minute. I know about him, and just like myself, my child was unborn at that time. So, but he had a kid of his own. So my child was unborn. He has a kid of his own. He's got a job. I've got a job. We're coming there to play hockey. It's a special interest group. So yeah, he might have some ability in order to engage in a physical conflict I don't have because he's former military. But the truth of the matter is, when you really think about it, with me standing my ground and, as I mentioned in that example, just staring him down while he was staring at me, and we've not spoken ever since then, I came to the realization, I'm like, he doesn't have many advantages on me, if at all, and the ones that he does have, if he uses them, then it's going to end up worse for him. So what happens if somebody goes ahead and gets into physical confrontation, two adults, in a hockey locker room? Well, if it's high school hockey, they say, oh, guys, just break it up, break it up. But if there's actually people that get hurt, and it's people who are older, like I said, living in mainstream society kind of thing, part of the rat race, whatever it is. If he goes ahead and he makes a physical gesture towards me, a physical attack, so he stands to lose in many ways. One way that he stands to lose is that if he gets physically engaged with me, there's the chance that I could get the better of him in an act of self-defense, and he could end up, he could have physical consequences for that. Just speaking matter-of-factly. Again, that's not trying to be threatening. I'm just speaking matter-of-factly. Two people get into physical confrontation, it could end up in one way or the other. But let's say, for example, that I could go ahead and defend myself, and I can go ahead and stand my ground physically, and I can get the better of him. Again, acting in self-defense. But let's say he gets the better of me. What happens to me? What happens to me on that end? Well, hopefully nothing too major, but at that point, there's any number of things that can happen. Somebody can come into the locker room and be a witness. I could go ahead and say something to somebody, which I probably wouldn't. So maybe I should, but he, he wouldn't know about that. He could go ahead and have, somebody file a lawsuit against him. He can go away and go and get taken to prison, right? He doesn't want to be away from his family. Any reasonable person does not want to be taken to prison, to be taken away from their family, to face a lawsuit. So at that point, that was kind of what was going through my head. I was like, wait a minute. If I go ahead and I stand my ground with him, it's going to end up in one of two ways. Either he's going to end up getting hurt by messing with me, or B, he's going to end up, if he gets the better of me, he's going to end up, worse off than when he started. So in reality, he has absolutely nothing to gain in having a physical confrontation with me. And when I went ahead and I processed that information, I stood my ground, I was confident, took a deep breath, stared him down, and guess what? Like I said, that was the last chapter of that story. Now, that's not me trying to come across as all tough and everything. I'm not trying to be macho on this program, not my intention. However, I will say that the perception that I would go ahead and stand my ground made him probably weigh what he wanted to do on his end, be like, you know what, this is probably not worth dealing with. I got a home to get back to, I've got a job to get back to. Screw this guy, I'm out of here,
Yeah, totally. What is there to be said, though? You mentioned he had nothing to gain. But how about those people that have nothing to lose?
Those people are dangerous. If they feel like they've got nothing to lose, those people are very, very dangerous. And I'm very glad you brought that up, because I had a feeling that several times in high school, there are certain guys that are just trying to go ahead and be tough, and they're trying to go ahead and make me feel bad and everything. And they were really just pretty much like, as we say, a lot of those guys were just kind of like, quote unquote, all talk. And they were like, I'm like, oh, this guy's not really going to do anything. Like, I didn't take him that seriously. And I was getting more confidence in myself, and I'm like, hey, this is not going to end up well for anybody if this thing gets started. But then the other guys I was thinking, I'm like, wow, this guy's a pretty loose cannon. I've either seen him fight before, or he has a reputation that he did something, or there are a few guys that had been in juvenile detention and that kind of thing. One guy actually, I'm glad that I avoided a fight with him, a guy whose name is Chris. I won't mention his last name, but yeah, he actually ended up, he was bullying me throughout parts of high school on and off, and I was tempted to go ahead and fight back. I didn't, but it's probably a good thing because he ended up in prison later. I don't know exactly what it was for, but he was a felon, and I saw photos of him. Looks like a guy who knows how to fight with big biceps, all that kind of stuff. I could have gotten it with somebody who could have, messed with my life for years after high school. If he considered me an adversary, or he remembered that he and I had a physical confrontation, that could have ended up very bad for me. I don't know what he did to get into jail, and I don't want to know what he did to get into jail. That could have been a very dangerous person for me to have as a rival. So I'm glad that I avoided it. Probably in that moment, I felt kind of weak and I felt kind of ashamed and that kind of thing. But at the same time, it ended up being a blessing in retrospect because I may have felt like I was losing face, and I didn't feel very proud in that moment. But I probably saved myself a heap of trouble for years to come.
Yeah. So would it be fair to think that a big percentage of people that are getting picked on are of the mentality that they don't have anything to gain, and that's why they don't fight back? And the people that are picking on people are of the mentality that they have nothing to lose, and that's why they keep picking on people.
Yes, a lot of that is true. I like how you said that. However, the thing is that that is actually pretty accurate. But I think that within the people who keep on picking on somebody, some of them, that's the thing about them, is that some of them do actually have something to lose. They do, because in the case of one of the guys who picked on me, and he ended up on the short end of the fight, he was picking on me as a matter of perception or because he thought I was vulnerable or whatever. But when I answered back and I retaliated, he ended up worse for it. And again, he was taller than me, he was trying to act like he was tougher than me and that kind of thing, but I was gaining strength and smarts and I was becoming more aware and that kind of thing. So I think that he did have a lot to lose in that situation. Plus, I think he was a pretty good student and that kind of thing. I don't think he wanted to get suspended or expelled from school. But he still kept on coming at me because he must have thought that, hey, I'm gaining credibility. I'm looking like a cooler guy here because I'm picking on Mark. But I probably just called him on his bluff. He thought that I was going to retaliate, and he did. So he is probably one of those people that does have something to lose, but he felt like he had more to gain, and that he expected me that I would not retaliate. But I did.
It also may be a fair statement that a lot of these people may not even be aware of what they have to lose.
That's true too. That's a very, very valid conclusion. I think sometimes people get hot-headed in the moments and that kind of thing. They're not thinking clearly, or there's peer pressure. A lot of times, people who are getting into fights, I remember years ago I was at a sports bar. I thought fights at sports bars were just something that happened on TV, or in movies. These guys literally went outside and challenged each other to the fight and then started swinging at each other around the pavement. So I'm not trying to make this show all about being macho and trying to make people hear about how tough Mark is and that kind of thing. It's really not. What I really am saying, I'm actually saying this from a really compassionate, empathetic angle. If you've ever been bullied, if you've ever had kids that have been bullied, if your kids have ever been bullied, it's a terrible, terrible pain. It's a terrible, terrible way to live. And I'm just speaking as somebody, again, not from a macho standpoint, I'm speaking as somebody who's had to fight back, who's had physical confrontations and gotten the better end of those physical confrontations, but also somebody who either, avoided a physical confrontation because I was scared, I didn't have confidence, or B, I thought it was smart to avoid it. I skillfully maneuvered out of it because it seemed like it was the right thing to do. It was a smart thing to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I could be very hot-headed and macho. I could think, oh, yeah, I'm going to go out and get this guy. But the truth of the matter is, I'm a middle-aged male and that kind of thing. And I have a family. And it just, I have a job. And most aspects of my life, including working with you, Eric, are good. They're gratifying. And it's just not worth jeopardizing. It's not worth jeopardizing, and I want to let people know out there that there is hope. You can't possibly have a solution at the time in every situation, play the Monday morning quarterback and say that we know everything. I don't claim to be that person. I'm just saying I'm one of those people who's experienced it. I feel for people who have experienced it. I empathize with them, and I just think that there are some situations which we can maneuver differently in. But part of it is perception and coming to the table with confidence and being smart enough and experienced enough to identify, wait, this is an actual advantage that somebody has where this guy really knows how to fight, really feels like he's got nothing to lose, versus somebody who's just going ahead and putting on a show for his buddies when it comes down to the actual time to have a confrontation. He really doesn't have any advantages over you at all. That's
in your personal life, how have you gone about identifying who's who?
Great question, and I think it just all comes down to experience. I think that right now, a lot of my life, I think that back then it was really kind of physical, of like, oh, hey, we're going to do this, going to do that. Because as young people, what do? They have hormones, and those hormones are changing through different levels of their lives and their growth spurts and that kind of thing. So there's a physical response, when it comes to, just about anything, I think that my response a lot of times were physical or to cramp up, to get nervous. But right now, my response is like, okay, well, wait a minute. I'm an adult now, so I have to go ahead and I have to exercise more self-restraint. So a lot of what I'm doing is very cerebral. We talked about Wayne Gretzky, arguably the greatest hockey player ever lived, or Michael Jordan, the best basketball player that ever lived. In Wayne Gretzky's case, he'll tell you he'll be the first one to tell you he wasn't the best athlete. But his aspect to the game, his approach, was so incredibly psychological that he could almost foresee in the game how everything was going to play out and what he was going to do in response. It's like if you go ahead and if you watch video as a coach, and you know this being a coach yourself, you matched up against Michael Jordan as a basketball coach or matched up against Wayne Gretzky as a hockey coach. You know how a lot of these players are going to play. You know what their tendency is. You know what their positioning is. You know their style of skating, how fast they skate, that kind of thing. What kind of shots they prefer to take. It's like you get a psychological advantage. And we have that advantage more than ever right now because we have a lot of video. I mean, pretty much everybody who I know watches video all the time. So that's just what it boils down to, is a lot of what we're doing is psychological, and it's very, very cerebral. And you just play things out in your mind. Like, wait a minute, if this happens right now, how is this going to go? And then you just kind of deal with it as it plays out. And usually, I think with some experience and thinking things out clearly, objectively, it meets your expectations. One quick cultural reference: if you've ever seen any of the Sherlock Holmes movies, Sherlock Holmes is that kind of thing. Some of the more recent ones. Who's Robert Downey Jr., I believe, played the lead role. He could go ahead before something happened and play out, maybe fast forward 30 seconds about how everything was about to play out before he even had the first confrontation with somebody. That's what made him such a genius and got him out of some tough jams. So that's what I think it is. I think it's psychological, it's cerebral, it's experience, it's maturity, it's any number of things.
Would you say also it's knowing when it's time to fight and when it's not worth the fight? So,
absolutely.
For example, in Cobra Kai, one of my favorite sayings, I'm probably going to mess it up, from Mr. Miyagi, when Daniel was talking about the things he was afraid of. Mr. Miyagi said the best way to avoid getting hit is not be there.
Exactly. That's right.
Like so many times there are kids that, are so hell-bent on being accepted and liked that they endure both perceived and actual bullies because they want to be a part of the group and hang out on the soccer field. But I would venture to say, and curious to your opinion, do you think Wayne Gretzky or Michael Jordan really cared about how they were treated on the playground?
That's a great question. I'd love to delve into the psychology and interview them and find that out. It's like, for example, when Michael Jordan went ahead, Wayne Gretzky wasn't let into the NHL initially, and that was more like kind of like legal reasons, and he wasn't of age and that kind of thing, but he probably felt like, hey, I'm a good enough player. What are they discriminating against me because of my age or maybe legalities or whatever? Michael Jordan, as many of us know, didn't make his high school basketball team initially. Now, I wasn't there at that time to be able to say how well he played or didn't play to deserve that or to earn that spot, but the thing is that It's a valid point. It's a valid question. Maybe they did feel like they were at a disadvantage of some kind, or maybe they did feel like they were, they were having difficulty differentiating themselves, actual versus perceived disadvantages, and that kind of created a vengeance. Like if you go ahead and if you watch Wayne Gretzky play, he's a competitive guy, but the thing is that a lot of his demeanor has been pretty self-restrained. Michael Jordan, on the other hand, he gained some self-restraint over the years, but you see you see the look on his face, and you see him play, and that guy's extremely competitive. He almost looks like a mad. You know what I mean? He comes at you. I'm like, wow, he's coming at you with a full head of steam, and he's tough. He's got an absolute element of toughness about him. I think a lot of people who played against him will agree. He'll knock him down. He'll go ahead and give you that look. Might even push you once or twice. He'll bury a few free throws, and then he'll come back for more next time around.
Yeah, definitely. My thought, maybe further context of choosing your battles is obviously speculation, but I don't think that Wayne Gretzky, maybe he did initially, but later on did not care if the playground bully wanted to share the swing with him. Or Michael Jordan didn't care if the playground bully wanted to share the soccer ball with him. Both these people decided what their playground was going to be, and then those are the bullies they fought, both the perceived and the actual.
Absolutely.
So by this, hopefully, we can be empowered if you're being bullied of maybe the playground you're trying to fit into doesn't really matter. And it's not worth proving your point or fighting these perceived and actual bullies to try and belong. Maybe it's more a matter of finding what playground you belong on. And once you find that playground, then you make the decision to stand firm.
Absolutely. And this whole thing about Wayne Gretzky is not entirely necessarily applicable, but it's still interesting to note nonetheless. So people were trying to go ahead early in Wayne Gretzky's career. They're trying what they do with a lot of future stars, trying to engage him physically, knock him over, threaten him, and intimidate him. And eventually, he decided probably, hey, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I don't want to fight. I want to focus on the game. I want to be a better player. That's not how I play. His approach is more cerebral, more finesse. And he ended up having the tough guys playing his line. So before he was playing at the outset with a couple of finesse players who could pass to and score a lot of goals right alongside of him, but then he ended up playing with tough guys like Marty McSorley, for example. Marty McSorley was kind of known as the police officer. He's the guy like, you go ahead and you mess with Wayne Gretzky, you mess with me. So what ends up happening is Marty McSorley plays with that chip on his shoulder, and he's that tough guy, and that allows Wayne to say, hey, this is not my fight. This is somebody else's fight. Let me go ahead and focus on the finer aspects of the game. So while Marty McSorley was getting in people's ears and fighting with them, Wayne Gretzky was busy going ahead and making passes and scoring goals and stuff. So I think a lot of it is a maturity and a focus, and I think Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky were able to say that, hey, this is not my fight, or let's live to fight another day, that kind of thing. And a lot of that, like I said, does come with experience, maturity, and going from physical to mental and psychological, cerebral type of things. The next example, though, that I wanted to bring up was interesting because we've talked a lot about sports and we've talked about the actual, playground in school and that kind of thing. It was actually in several work settings that I was in. As a new guy in several of these work settings, one was a technical kind of job, another one was more like a marketing, sales, business development type of job. These two new guys that I was working with in these two different settings were trying to tell me somehow, oh, hey man, if you want to, I hear that they're laying people off, and you want to get up to speed, you got to go ahead and do more technical work. You got to learn faster. You're not meeting your numbers and all that kind of stuff. And at first, I was really kind of given a jolt by that, these guys are trying to go ahead and make me feel bad about myself, trying to intimidate me, and I got in my own head at least reactive. Like I got upset about it, what kind of start is this to a new job when these guys are trying to go ahead and tell me that, I'm not pulling my weight, I'm not doing my job, all that kind of stuff. And then after that, I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, well, wait a minute. These guys are new guys just like I am. They haven't cemented their legacy with this company. In fact, they haven't gotten past their probationary periods. And here they are already trying to tell me that I'm not pulling my weight, or I'm not, or that, I'm not meeting my numbers, or, I need to learn faster, any number of things. So I basically said in different versions of the same thing to both guys at different points in my career, and both of these were early in my career. They were trying to go ahead and, intimidate the young guy. And I said, I'll tell you what, thank you for your concern, but I've got a manager here, and if there's any concerns about my performance or my contribution to the team, my manager can address those with me accordingly. Well, needless to say, I got a lot of dirty looks from those guys after that point and that kind of thing. I could tell they were kind of looking over my shoulder, seeing what I was doing on the computer and that kind of thing. I just greet them, hey guys, what's up, kind of thing. But the truth of the matter is, they stood down as far as telling me what I was doing and that kind of, and deciding for me whether or not my performance was up to par. So I kind of looked at those guys similar like I did with the situation at hockey. I looked at those guys and I'm like, wait a minute, you're going to go ahead and try to make me feel bad about myself and try to get into my head and all that kind of stuff. You're obviously not looking out for my best interests. I really don't think you are when you're talking to me that way and the tone they were using. So I'm like, hey, you're in it. You're in this just like I am. You are the new guy just like I am, and you do not have any advantages over me. So I'm going to tell you in a polite way, be quiet, do your job, stay out of my business. And
in a literal, technical sense, are you still doing the same line of work?
It's different. This technical work that I'm doing now is more advanced than I was doing back then. A lot of that was proprietary, where what I'm doing is proprietary now as well. But yeah, it's but I'm actually working. It's technical stuff, but it's on a different set of systems. That was for one of the jobs, and the other set of the jobs, or the other job was, like I said, entire sphere altogether. It was more business development and marketing.
Okay, the reason why I asked is because it's almost like if Michael Jordan was hanging out at the hockey rink and the boys in the hockey rink are trying to give him a hard time for his ability to skate, it's like he really wouldn't care because that's not his sport.
Exactly.
And a lot of times people get picked on when they're doing stuff that maybe is below their level. And now that you have reached the level that is closer to where you belong, you're probably not getting picked on as much, are you?
Not at all. I'm not getting picked on in professional settings at all, and I'm coming in, very confident, and I think I'm blessed to be working, in a better work situation, in a better company. I've actually been waiting for this for a number of years. I kind of lost hope for a while, but yeah, the last few companies that I've worked at have been very good to me, been very respectful. And I'm really very appreciative of that. Now, of course, I'm more confident, I'm more mature than I was back then. That was the start of my career, not mid-career. But I've gained more confidence myself. And this is for people who are out there. It's like, hey, I'm not an example of a shining star here or anything, but I'm letting you know somebody who started out without a lot of confidence, was getting bullied, he didn't know what he wanted to do with his career, and here I am, I'm doing better now. I'm a family guy, and I have a regular full-time job, and I make decent money, and that kind of thing. On some level, I'm still a kid at heart, but I guess I got my act together as a grown-up too. So what ends up happening is that I think that as we go along, we gain that confidence. Now, maybe part of why I'm doing better at this company that I'm at right now is because I have more confidence and I'm projecting it. But I think I'm also in a better work situation as well. I think that the people are nicer and more patient, more approachable. It's remote, so it's a little bit different. This is a post-COVID thing, or shouldn't call it post-COVID. We still have COVID, but post, the last few years of COVID, it's changed the workplace. But there are a lot of factors. So I want to let people know that the bullying seems like it's going to happen constantly, and you may deal with it at different points in life. But I do want to let them know that it does get better. In my case, it did get better. It's not because anybody waved a magic wand. It's because I became tougher. I became stronger. I became more experienced. I became smarter. I picked my battles, as you alluded to earlier, and it's just I'm doing my best to make it, just like anybody else is. Yeah,
there's an illustration that I like. It's very fitting. I don't know how true it is, but I've heard it referenced a few times. Which kind of alludes to what we're talking about: picking your battles and becoming more prepared as you move along in life. So, an eagle and a hawk are both birds of prey. And there is a smaller bird like a raven or a blackbird maybe that sometimes will be very aggressive and will go ahead and launch an attack against these birds of prey. And they will basically hop on their back while they're mid-flight, try and pick at their neck aggressively. And these birds of prey obviously are bigger, and so they're not worried about, is this an actual threat or is it a perceived threat? what they supposedly do is they continue to fly higher. They fly to their height, which means finding that place where you belong. And it gets to a point to where they fly so high that the bird picking on them can't go that high because they can't breathe, and so they let go. So I like the illustration because it kind of goes to what we're saying about how if you can stay true to what you're trying to do in life and just hone in on getting better and becoming stronger, eventually people that may have been inclined to try the waters with you will no longer even be in the same arena.
Absolutely, and I really like that that analogy that you used. That was very, very interesting about the birds. I didn't know that anything like that even existed in nature. So that is very, very interesting. And yeah, like you talked about, that's a prime example of an actual versus perceived, or maybe a little bit of both in that situation, you know. But the thing is that this kind of thing of closing the gap and between people and leveling the playing field, again, it extends to all aspects of life. So we've talked about what happens in the playground. Somebody's trying to go ahead and they're trying to physically intimidate me. They're trying to physically intimidate me, and I'm able to go ahead and call them out on it and kind of say, hey, you know what? He doesn't have any advantage over me. He's trying to make himself look cool. So, and I was able to go ahead and stand my ground. In the special interest group, in the hockey situation, I don't know if he would have made a physical confrontation out of it, but he might have. He seemed like that kind of guy that possibly would. I stood my ground. I realized that he had as much to lose as I do, even though, like you alluded to, some people don't feel like they have anything to lose. In this case, he did, and I went ahead and I stood my ground, and I got out of that situation. Then we know about situations, as we said, in the workplace. It's a wait a minute, here, the new guy just like I am. So if I'm with a group of trainees and one of them is trying to intimidate me, it's almost like laughable. Yeah, maybe they joined a month before me. But it's like, you guys are still in your training period. Like I said, you guys are still in your probationary period. It's almost like comical. It's sadly comical that you're going to go ahead and try to make somebody feel, when they're first coming in, within the first few weeks or month, where the first few months are training, where people are just learning, you're going to try to make them feel worse about themselves while they're still trying to get their, acquainted with the company, with the culture, to learn the subject matter. I think it's just a sad power play. It's just sad. I can never imagine, I'm not saying I'm a perfect guy or anything. I can never imagine anybody with any dignity, myself, yourself included, would ever try to go ahead and make a trainee feel bad about themselves who are just trying to, or intentionally, intimidate them or anything, make them feel bad about themselves about, not having been up to speed fast enough or not learning the subject matter, not pulling their weights. It's like, hey, they're training, Some people learn faster than others. Some people learn in different ways than others. Another example of that is what we talked about also a few shows ago. The example that was submitted by somebody who wrote into our show. They went ahead and they were talking about the whole deal with their significant other kicking them out of the house. Okay, they're kicking them out of the house. They're feeling bad about that. What right does the significant other, have to kick them out of the house? They do not. They're there that same way. They're both living there. They both contribute to whatever degrees. They're both paying rent. They're both covering utilities. They have absolutely no right. Now, somebody might feel bad in the moment, and be like, "Oh yeah, I got kicked out by this person, and maybe they're paying a little more rent than I am." The truth of the matter is, it's like. People don't have a right to do that. So that's why I said if somebody's experiencing something like that, you go back into that house, you say no. Okay? If you need some space, that's fine. I'll respect you. But I have a right to be here just as much as you do. For me, it's all about closing the gap. You close the gap between you and the bully. You close the gap between you and the other trainees in the workplace. You close the gap between you and your significant other in the home. You close those gaps and you make them feel like, hey, we're all in this together. You're not any better or any worse than I am, so let's figure out a solution. Shall we? That's how I feel about it.
That's a good end.